Now. There we go. And I'm going to mute everybody. And share the screen. And welcome everybody to the third Wednesday Vesper service sponsored by UMIAC, the Unitarian Universalist Multiracial Unity Action Council. Tonight, Reverend Craig Moro is our preacher, and his sermon is called Open Doors and Tactical Grace. Craig Moro is a graduate of the University of Chicago and Star King School for the Ministry. He's lived and studied in India, Singapore, Thailand, the Netherlands, and Japan. He's served churches in California, Illinois, and the Pacific Northwest, and is a founding member of the Tri-Cities Interfaith Alliance in Washington. He now lives in Portland, where he served the Y East UU congregation half-time. He's now retired. His sermons are often informed by readings in the original languages of religious texts, including Arabic, Hebrew, and Tamil, and are known for blending scholarship with plain speech and a sense of humor. The title is Open Doors and Tactical Grace, and his description is, unless you grew up without TV or movies, you've seen this happen in cartoons 100 times. The big bad wolf is straining to get through the three pigs' door. Or maybe it's Elmer Fudd, come to kill a certain wascally wabbit. Suddenly, someone inside throws the door open and the intruder flies through the house, unable to check the speed of his entry or his exit toward the cliff out back. Open doors can mean not deliverance, but disaster. Our next service is September 20th. Our preacher is Dr. Matthew Shear, who was just playing Bob Dylan for us. I put TBA for the sermon title because Matt has been going back and forth. Do you have a sermon title you'd like to announce? Whoop, you're muted.
After all that, I did it. Yeah, I'm going to call it a tincture of time, which is a term we learned in medicine. Sometimes time is what is needed to heal, and we will be applying our UU principles combined with a tincture of time.
Thank you. We gather this hour as people of faith, having sorrows and joys, needs and gifts. We like that speaking of hope is a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and in celebration of the life we share together. Craig has given me permission to choose both the opening hymn and the closing hymn. And so for the opening hymn, I want to repeat the same hymn I used last month. I think it's kind of neglected, and I want to encourage its use. How happy are they, born or taught, who do not serve another's will, whose armor is their honest thought, and simple truth their highest skill, whose passions not the rulers are, whose souls are still and free from fear, not tied unto the world with care of public fame or private ear, who have their lives from rumors freed, whose conscience is their strong retreat, whose state no flattery can feed, nor ruin make oppressors great. All such are freed from servile bands of hope to rise or fear to fall. They rule themselves, but rule not lands, and having nothing, yet have all. It is the mission of the Unitarian Universalist Multiracial Unity Action Council to carry out and foster anti-racist and multiracial unity activities, both within and outside the Unitarian Universalist Association, through education, bearing witness and other actions, and expansion of our membership, both within and outside the walls of our congregations. We also seek to defend our UU principles against those who seek to undermine them. We envision our congregations, denomination, and society as not being color blind, but color appreciative, as judging and treating members of the world's rank and file by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or their cultural heritage, and as treasuring diversity in the context of the beloved community. We call this vision multiracial Unitarian Universalism. This is the prize on which we try to keep our eyes. This is the mountaintop. This is the goal, the unity of the light and dark-skinned people of the world. And now I give you the Reverend Craig Moro.
Thank you so much, Richard. Well, before I start my reading, I have to ask, have you lost your keys? Has anyone here in our virtual church lost their keys? Oh, I see some of you are fumbling, but I didn't mean lost them today. I meant ever. Have you ever lost your keys? It's a miserable experience to come to a door you want to pass and then find that it's shut, locked. You can't open it. For anyone who's ever been confined in jail or elsewhere, you know that it's also a terrible thing to hear a door that you can't open lock behind you, or to face a wall with no doors at all. Oops. Started to get an echo there. Is there an open mic?
I'm not seeing any open mics here.
No.
Do you-
Richard, I wonder if you're causing the feedback. Your mic is open.
Oh, Richard's mic is open.
Yeah.
There we go. Now I don't hear any echoes. Okay, well, those doors, that's all you hear when that door is locked behind you. The echo of your own voice. When doors open up for us, that's a good thing, isn't it? We use words about doors opening to speak of situations that when we don't solve whatever problem we've been facing by our own efforts, it just seems to happen and new possibilities unfold. Even if the way is not completely certain, now there at least seems to be a way to go. Religious people often use words about God opening doors for them as a way to speak about God's grace. The door was shut, but God opened it for me. This could be more than a figure of speech. The Christian apostle Paul is said to have once been unjustly imprisoned together with his companions. They sang praises to God until, lo and behold, a violent earthquake caused the doors of the prison to burst open. Believe it or not, it's no surprise to read about such a thing in a religious scripture. The scripture of Islam, the Quran, speaks a language very much like that of the Bible and has almost the same cast of characters: Adam and Eve, Noah and Abraham, Jesus and Mary, and so on. So you'll probably not be surprised to learn that this book also speaks of paradise opening its doors to the faithful, or that the Prophet Muhammad instructed believers to say, "Oh God, open the doors of your mercy to me," whenever they entered a mosque, and to exit with the words, "Oh God, I ask for your grace." But here are some words about open doors that we might find startling from the 6th chapter of that book. Their hearts have hardened, and the devil has stylishly dressed up for them what they have done. And so when they forgot what they'd been reminded of, we opened upon them the doors to all things, until just as they were rejoicing in all they'd accomplished, we took them suddenly and eliminated their hope. Suddenly, these words about open doors do not seem to be speaking of grace. Or maybe they are. The Arabic says literally, we opened the doors upon them or on them. But what does it mean to open the doors on someone? Let's try to open up these words a little more after our hearts are opened by meditation and music.
You're still muted. Richard.
Yes, I know. The performers are the chancel choir of the First Unitarian Church of Oakland.
Whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leading, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leading, ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan
Thanks so much. That song has a very special place in my heart. Lynn Unger set it to music, set the Rumi's poem to music. Lynn Unger had been in youth groups with me. Then she was a minister. Since she went to seminary, she took my course on Islam, and she was a minister. And then she was for many years the director of religious education for the Church of the Larger Fellowship. So it really has a very special place in my heart. When can open doors mean not deliverance, but disaster? Unless you were raised without TV or movies, you've seen it happen in cartoons 100 times. Big Bad Wolf is straining to get through the door of a house in order to eat Little Red Riding Hood or the Three Little Pigs, or it's Elmer Fudd coming to kill that wascally wabbit, Bugs Bunny. Bang, 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 push, shove, and strain. Go get the giant Acme battering ram to break it down when suddenly someone inside throws the door open and the intruder flies into the house, unable to check the speed of his entry. In he goes, straight through the house, right out the back door, over a cliff, or into the jaws of a much bigger and badder creature. The look of triumph changes at once to horror, or shock and awe, if you prefer those words. Or you might prefer these. We opened upon them the doors to all things until, just as they were rejoicing in all that they'd accomplished, we took them suddenly and eliminated their hope. Though it's hardly a Looney Tune, there's a grim humor here when the exaltation of easy entry, taking house after house, position after position, is turned to despair. Words about God opening all doors for us may speak of God's grace, but to speak of all the doors suddenly opening on us is another matter entirely. This may still be a moment of grace, but it's a moment of grace delivered tactically. God may still be our gracious God, but now when he takes us, we're not lifted or freed. We're taken down by his tactical grace. God seems to be saying, I do not close my hand to strike or smite you, but I open it profoundly. I give you access to all things all at once, much more than you can bear. I deliver the world from my hand to yours and its whole weight to your shoulders. When you go through doors that you don't have to open yourself, you don't really learn how to do it. What happens if they close behind you? When every door is an entrance, there's really no exit. The doors open on us, and on we must go. Where we might stop, nobody knows. Maybe we can never stop. This is not so much an ironic way to lose as a terrifying way to win, be it a battle, a war, a vote, or an election. What is gained may turn to loss of even what you had before. Religious scriptures do some of their most important work when they reflect upon such false triumphs of days gone by, such missions only seemingly accomplished. And they try to give us a heads up about others yet to come. Here, the Quran shares its vision of God's grace used as a weapon of mass instruction. We see how the doors to all things might open on us violently as we are sucked into an imploding vacuum, a black hole. At the moment when every door opens, our hopes are all dashed away. We opened upon them the door to all things till they were rejoicing in all they accomplished. We took them suddenly and eliminated their hope. There's no good English translation for the Arabic verb bodisa that's used in this passage. I've rendered its meaning as to eliminate hope, but it can also mean to be made to despair or even to bedevil. The personal name of the devil in the Quran is Iblis, derived from the same hopeless word. Iblis means hopelessness or despair. The name tells you a lot about the Quran's notion of the devil, who's also called things like the slurker, the whisperer, the insinuator. There's no great Satan in original Islam. That modern slogan is not to be found in the Quran, nor in any of Islam's sacred literature. The devil is not the great rival or enemy of God, but rather of human beings. And he's much more desperate than mighty. Here's the story of how he got to be that way. God made the angels from fire long before making human beings from earth. Yes, they were beautiful, but one was more beautiful than all the others. He was also the most knowledgeable angel and the most zealous in his worship of God. Or you could say he was the most fervently religious angel, if you can imagine one angel being more religious than others. His name at that time was Azazel, aloofness or separateness. Or maybe we could combine these two ideas and translate this angel's name as arrogance. The angels enjoyed thousands of years of privilege as the only beings with whom God would have conversations as they circled his throne, glorifying and praising him in their own special identity-based worship space. Angels only in this one. And then for some reason, God decided to make a new kind of talking creature, us. He started with Adam, the father of all, shaping him from clay of different kinds and colors, which accounts for the different skin tones of his offspring today. It also reminds us of, as an aside, of Malcolm X's surprise when in Mecca for the Hajj, he found people of all complexions worshiping together and eating from a common dish. This is not what he'd learned to expect from the racial separatist teachings of the American Nation of Islam. It changed his life's course, that experience, and it may have led to his death. Okay, so God did not finish the first human being all at once, but left the clay body lying someplace where the angels would pass it by for 40 days or 40 years, according to different narrators. One version tells us when the angels passed by it, they were frightened by what they saw. The angels were frightened. The angel most frightened was Azazel, the most beautiful angel. He would kick it and make the body produce sounds, groans or echoes, we don't know. But we know that this multiracial earth man disgusted the angel, who was obsessed with identity, with keeping fire and mud in separate space, each in separate space of its own. Finally, one day he decided to inspect the clay man more closely and, quote, entered Adam's mouth and left from his posterior. And then he entered his posterior and left from his mouth. When he came out, he said to Adam, what were you created for? Pointing at the clay man, he joked to the other angels, don't be afraid of that one, for your Lord is solid, whether this one is hollow. This one is hollow. He was sure from his probing that the man was empty. But little does this angel know, as he comes out, whichever end it was, that he will be the butt of the joke at the end of the story. Because just then, our supposedly solid God filled the hollow part of Adam with his divine breath, just like in the Bible. Next, God commanded the angels to bow before his newest creation. Only the most beautiful angel refused. Why should fire bow to hollow earth, pure energy to lumpy matter? He had found no resistance while passing through Adam, and so concluded that he was empty. That was his judgment upon us all. And I should tell you that this judgment, that a simple, naked human being was not worth the respect of angels, was the original sin, according to Islam. Let me repeat, violation of human dignity was the original sin. You remember Abu Ghraib prison, don't you? And all of those photos? I hope that my mentioning of cakewalks and mission accomplished reminded you of those days. Please don't forget, if you remember. Humiliation of a human being via the openings of the body repeats the particulars of the original sin, intentionally or not. Your mouth is not your space, it's mine. Your womb is not your space, it's mine. Whether we do it on our own or go along with social pressure, we who would be angels in the world's eyes are behaving exactly like the devil. Not great Satans, just dirty little stinkers. As punishment for such behavior, God bedeviled the most beautiful angel, first among angels, and he became Iblis, the one for whom hope has been eliminated. Azazel, isolation, arrogance has become despair. He met no resistance in the prone human figure. All doors, front and back, were thrown open for him to take a little cakewalk, which quickly changed into something else. First, no resistance, and now there's no hope. No resistance, no hope. It makes me wonder, maybe hope is a form of resistance to the arrogance that says my kind matters more than your kind does, has greater light or higher purpose. Hope is resistance to the judgment that a human being, that any human being, can be empty of value. That's the real meaning of the first Unitarian Universalist principle. Our covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. These words don't just express a good idea. They're words of resistance, not a proposition to be analyzed, but a radical hope to proclaim that there is inherent worth and dignity to each and every person, no matter what we find or think we fail to find when we probe their minds and bodies. Don't be seduced by the devil's judgment that a human being can be hollow. That hollow space is where God's breath enters. Listen to it now. Coming in going out, down and up. But listen carefully. Iblis may not kick us, but his whispers can trick us, smooth as silk with expert timing. The Quran says their hearts have hardened and the devil has stylishly dressed up for them what they have done. Arrogance was his downfall, but remember that he's a former archangel, a master at glorification and praise, so good at it that at first his work even satisfied God. He's a clever salesman and can speak with that angel's accent to sell his bill of goods. All he needs is to get a whisper of himself going inside us, where it can start an echo and maybe push God's breath back out. The Quran is always addressed simultaneously to the individual and to the community. Here's our verse about open doors again, plus the next one that I haven't read until now. Their hearts have hardened. The devil has stylishly dressed up for them what they have done. And so when they forgot what they'd been reminded of, we opened upon them the doors to all things until we took them suddenly and eliminated their hope. Thus was the dabir of their community that mistreated others cut off. The Arabic word dabir can mean a root or origin. It can mean bygone times, our past, or history. So this community upon which the doors have been opened so suddenly may find itself not just disconnected from its historical roots, but also starving its flower and buds, its future. Azazel, the most beautiful and religious angel, became Iblis. Arrogance became hopelessness. And now this angel turned devil has led a community away from the best part of itself, from its noble roots and its tender promise. If he can get us to mutilate ourselves, maybe he'll feel beautiful again by comparison. He feels so ugly now. Poor sick fellow. So much wasted talent. So desperate for love. Our religious community branches from roots in the Universalist tradition as well as the Unitarian. Our Universalist forebears rejected the notion that God divides us into the saved and the damned as a worldview that enabled arrogance for the few and despair in all others. They rejected ideas like hell and eternal damnation and also the existence of a personal devil. No, there's no real angel who became the real devil, not if we mean by devil either the chief or the only member of some demonic supernatural species. But we can think instead of Iblis as the perennial voice of both arrogance and hopelessness, speaking now in whispers, now in hollow slogans, saying the same things to so many of us over so many centuries that it does seem to have a life of its own. So we can think of God as the radical voice, the living breath, a hope. When they forgot what they'd been reminded of, we opened upon them the doors to all things. That's the bad news. The good news is that when someone tells us that we've forgotten what we've been reminded of, we have the opportunity to remember again. The Quran says that the people in question forgot, past tense. It's not trying to provoke despair, but to jog our memories and get us back on track. It's not trying to slam doors in our face, but to hold one open, just a clear, bright crack so light can shine inside. Our scripture offers moments of tactical grace that can open hearts and minds, but not an infinite number of these moments. We have an opportunity now, but not necessarily forever. Protect your dabir now, your roots, your history, your principles, or you may not get another chance. Don't exchange them for any stylish window dressing. When a religious text cuts through pride and self-delusion to awaken this sense of both possibility and urgency, to soften and move our hearts before they harden completely, then it's done its job. If I've opened the doors of this particular scripture so it can speak to you a little, then likewise I've done mine. What your job is, only you can say. I hope you'll go out from our virtual doors today with some new tools, some lost keys found or new ones discovered, some words or ideas that you can use in your own search to find new respect for yourself, your heritage, our community, and your world. So may it be.
Thank you, Craig. This is what we do instead of passing the plate. Our goal is the unity of the light and dark-skinned people of the world. Our heartbreak is that our national association has gone down a path of a racial justice ideology that we feel has exactly the opposite effect, that makes racism worse. We exist to try to fight that and to promote and to provide UU congregations with something the UUA no longer seems capable of providing them with, namely common sense advice and support on matters of racial justice. Our solution is simple: live the 7 principles, follow the playbook of Dr. MLK Jr., and ignore this nonsense pouring out of 24 Farnsworth Street. I've taken it upon myself to choose another hymn that I think is kind of neglected in our churches that I like a lot. Dear weaver of our lives' design, whose patterns all obey, with skillful fingers gently guide the sturdy threads that will survive the tangle of our days. Take up the fabric of our lives with hands that gently hold, bind in the ragged edge that care would sunder and that pain would tear, and mend our raveling souls. Let eyes that in the plainest cloth a hidden beauty see, discern in us our richest hues, show us the patterns we may use to set our spirits free. Craig?
When we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we make a bow in their direction. We also offer hope. And hope is an open structure, more like a bridge than a wall. Let us open our doors to a space that's inviting, but in no way empty or hollow. Open up, step inside, then wait to see who follows. Blessed be. Richard, you're muted.
Thank you. I never used to have to unmute myself to avoid an echo. This is just one of the many ways that this new Zoom thing has sandbagged all of us this evening. I apologize for it. I've stopped the recording.